All right, Numbers 26 is called this one, Whatever Touches Them, because it comes right out of the text, but not our text for today. It goes all the way back to something we talked about in Leviticus 6, when some of the Lord's food offerings could actually make the things that they touched holy just by contact. And we said that repetition breeds themes. And so this is one of those chapters that reminds us how repetition can breed themes, because that chapter pointed back even further to some things we saw in the Genesis narrative, where we saw Jacob, just by nature of working for Laban, Laban realized by divination that he was blessed because of God being with Jacob. Likewise, one of Jacob's sons, Joseph, while he endured the mistreatment that he had in his father's house, by the time he moved on into slavery and then imprisonment, he was blessing the places where he was by nature of the fact that God was with him through all of those difficult times. And then in the land of Goshen, after all of the great things that Joseph had done for the nation of Egypt were forgotten, and they were taken into slavery once God finally brought the plagues that were going to lead to them being set free from slavery, while the nation of Egypt was undergoing difficult times. The Israelites were living right there in the land of Goshen, protected through those difficulties. And likewise, up to today, what we are going to see is a situation where Judah is a tribe that we said was a head of one of the divisions that camped around the tabernacle. With him were Issachar and Zebulun. And the interesting thing about this census is we are in a chapter in Numbers 26 where this is a census of the new generation. And out of all the tribes that camped around the tent, this is the only part of the camp that saw consistent growth, even while God was killing off an entire generation in the wilderness. Understanding this, Judah had by now gotten the promise that the scepter would not depart from Judah. Understanding that we don't see a lot mentioned about Issachar or Zebulun, but in being a part of Judah's camp, maybe it's just a coincidence, but maybe it's not, that they grew along with Judah during a time when the rest of the nation was experiencing a decline, much like we saw with Jacob. He was blessing Laban, an otherwise wicked man who was experiencing blessing because of what God was doing through Jacob. Likewise, Joseph bringing blessings to both the prison and his slave owner through what God was doing through Joseph and the people of Israel, seeing that even though they weren't holy people, as we got to see once they were out and free, God was still blessing them because he saw the way in which they were mistreated. And so understand this. As much as I would like to promise you good times all the time, the thing that all of these folks have in common is something we're going to see in the life of Christ as well. They had to endure a period of suffering in order to get to this period of prosperity. And often we want the good on both ends. We want it good coming and good going, but that's just not reality, and it's definitely not biblical reality. We understand it in the stock market, as I sometimes mention. You have to wait for an investment to mature, but sometimes in our expectations for Christianity, we can have a double standard. We understand in real life, you got to wait for good things to come around very often, and it's likewise the same thing here. So understand, when we look at passages like Galatians 6:9, I'm hoping in a season where I can be encouraging to offer you this encouragement. And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. And I want each of us to be able to understand the blessings that God can do even in dark times if we suffer with him during those times that he uses to build our character. As we said before, he's not simply beating us down to see us suffer. He's conditioning us to be able to handle the good times responsibly. And so I guess that's my prayer for all of us, that we not only learn to appreciate the value in difficult times, but we allow those times to prepare us for the moments when God wants to deliver us from even more difficult days ahead, much like the Goshens, much like the struggles and deliverances of Jacob and Joseph, and the people of Israel, and now, as we're seeing again, potentially Judah in a time of national decline. His best to you as you go forward in him, though.